What kind of physical reaction do you have to this word?
Let's take the ass out of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How about these words? And these words? And I could add validity, reliability, authentic, alternative, differentiated, right? We know that edu-speak around assessment. There's a reality to assessment. I have a 6-year-old. My 6-year-old thinks that we read books in order to answer multiple choice questions to gain enough points on accelerated reader to earn the class recess time for the day. When I think about assessment versus testing, I spend a lot of time thinking about how we recouple what happens in school with learning. Because I think somewhere along the way, those things got separated out. And I think about this a lot as a parent. I think about it a lot as an English teacher. I think about it a lot as an advocate for kids in schools. I probably right now spend 4 out of every 5 days immersed in schools. My goal is to be spending even more than that, working with teachers and working to figure out what we're doing with 21st century technologies to really amplify where kids are as learners. But I want to tell you a story. I think we all learn from stories. I saw how you all groaned at my story about Matthew. I want to tell a tale of 4 assessments. I was in a school a couple of weeks ago, and the principal was bouncing down the hallway to come and see me. It was this hallway. He was really excited. He said, I know that you're an expert in 21st century pedagogies and new literacies, and all of that jargon kind of came out of his mouth. And I smiled, and he said, I want you to see that up and down this hallway, we are using technology to really help assess what our kids know. Okay. First classroom that I walked into, and I want you to think about your colleagues' classrooms. I want you to think about your own classrooms. If I were to walk down a hallway in your building, what kinds of things would I see technology being used to do as it pertains to assessment, right? First classroom I walked into was a test scrimmage classroom. This is a one-to-one school, okay? So every kiddo had their laptop open, and they were really excited because the national average right now is that kids, this is a middle school, by the way, an 8th grade hall. The national average for middle school kids is something like 16 minutes a week total of keyboard time. Time in front of a computer doing something in school. Those are the in-school averages. They were really excited that their kids get at least 1 full class period a week. So that's 45 minutes a week that their kids are getting. Much more than what's in the national average. In a one-to-one school, think about that for a minute, but they were taking a test scrimmage, which means they'd opened up their laptops, they were on the password-protected school site, and they were keying in A, B, C, and D in response to the sample prompts that they needed for their state assessment. Got it? Teaching with technology to help with assessment, right? Feel good about that? And he bounded down the hallway to come and see me. He was really excited. And I was doing everything I could to not send any nonverbals out. I just smiled and I said, can we go to the next classroom, please? I didn't know quite what else to say. In the next classroom, they were having a Powerdown day. A Powerdown day. Has anybody ever had a Powerdown day? The t-shirt actually, or the classroom teacher had a t-shirt that she had made at cafepress.com called Powerdown Day, right there on the front. A Powerdown Day is when you have to drop the technology because you've got to do some serious business of schooling. And they were taking an exam based off of what they'd read in Catcher in the Rye, which I thought was pretty good, edgy, great reading for 8th graders, right? And I took a look at the quiz and what they were working on in their test, and it was a 10-item multiple choice test, right? So reductive, we're reading Catcher in the Rye to do those things. I was really depressed at this point in time because I thought, what is happening here? And in one school, in one hallway, I've got the test scrimmage, in the other hallway, I've got Powerdown Day. How are we doing really good and meaningful things to move kids? And then I moved into classroom number 3. By the way, would I see classrooms 1 or 2 in your buildings? Would I? Raise your hand if I'd ever see it. Should I? Is it okay once or twice? 3 times? Maybe 4 times? Should it be once a day, a week? Right? We'll think about it. I walked into classroom number 3 and saw kids working on Voicethread. They were creating their own learner-centered portfolios. They were taking the things from their paper-bound portfolios, because they hadn't gotten rid of those just yet, that they loved or that demonstrated their thinking or that they were proud of, taking a snapshot of them and putting them up in Voicethread. Some of the kids were even using Jing, which is a screencasting tool similar to Camtasia, to create a movie of themselves talking about what really worked and what was really demonstrated inside of that artifact and placing it into their Voicethread. Their Voicethread was open for comment to their parents and to any other adult with whom they shared the URL. The goal was it needed to be an adult because then you'd have an expert giving you some bit of feedback, an expert reader or writer. What the kids ended up doing was sharing it with one another, sharing it with kids in 7th grade so they could see the really great things they were going to be doing in 8th grade, sharing it with kids in 9th grade to say, you all thought you did really well on the mock trial, but look at what we've done, right? The only thing that was a little bit iffy about that work is that they had one really specific thing that they weren't allowed to include. They were not allowed to include any work in progress. They were not allowed to include the kind of messy stuff that we do as learners. It was meant to be polished, right? It's a portfolio. And we do that a lot when we think about portfolios. Sometimes portfolios are really just, here's the clean, beautiful, easy button work of what we've done, right? As opposed to that messy work in progress really showing us work as learners, showing us working as we go through a prompt, showing us as we think deeply about what we're doing in the 4th classroom. Okay, so would I see that 3rd classroom in your buildings? Trying to promote some student-directed learning, thinking about self-assessment, a little bit of agility, a little bit of peer assessment going on there, using the technology to amplify what we're doing. So taking something out of that portfolio and making it multimodal, making it commentable, opening it up to more voices and more authentic respondents, possibly. That last classroom was using IKVO. Anybody in here use IKVO? It is my favorite. One person, that's because she's my graduate student. Who's in one of my classes. IKVO is a free website that allows you to, I went looking for a new tool when GCast went away that I was using with students to support their work with podcasting, right? I wanted some specific tool that would allow us to capture their voices but then publish and broadcast some things out, something that was pretty flexible. IKVO also includes in it a mashup that includes Google Maps. So if you are, here's how IKVO works. This is an aside. The gentleman will be mad because I'll take 11 minutes now, but maybe you won't mind. If you're using IKVO, you dial into a website using a 1-800 number that's generated by the site, right? So kids who might not have a lot of agency in sitting down and typing out what they have to say and then recording it in an audio form and then posting it somewhere else can just make a call and speak and think aloud and reflect on the fly. It gets posted to the site, and then there's this great Google map that's clickable that allows you to see a thumbtack pointed into it from where that post was made. So we transformed in this particular classroom, in classroom 4, they transformed their oral history project. Previously, and the classroom teacher took me to the file cabinet, she had one dedicated file cabinet full of cassette tapes where students had gone into the community and interviewed somebody who had been a part of that community for 5 years or less, or someone who had been in that community for 25 years or more, right? To kind of get a sense, it was part of their urbanism unit, had some interesting prompts, and she had scads of cassette recordings because she couldn't dare to give them, or to throw them away, right? She had stories of all of these members of the community. So they took the kids and said, wait a minute, let's do this digitally. Kids made phone calls with their interviewee where they synthesized what it is that they wanted to post. The learning process that went on and the assessment bit of this came as students peer-reviewed one another's work, helped them think about the greater context of their fuller podcast and which pieces would be great and robust for a larger audience. They edited those, put them out on the web through their school iTunes channel. so that they could be responded to by others. Those got picked up by the County Historical Association, who's now holding on to these as a part of their greater site and their greater collection. The feedback to the students came through postings to the blog, came through postings to what they had inside of their iTunes account and their channel, and even more importantly, came through folks who were vlogging to them. So someone who would listen to one of those podcasts, turn a camera on themselves as a listener and provide that kind of feedback. There was assessment happening all over the place for kids, but it was interesting that that teacher co-designed the project with students and took this state rubric for what students needed to know and understand and be able to do in crafting an oral history and said, yes, you need this, but this isn't enough. Here's how we're going to beef it up and bolster it up to kind of build on some of the things that Troy was talking about before. In this school, there was a lot of evidence of assessment of learning, right? Those numbers that we grab of kids that they often carry along like bricks on their shoulders. There was some example at different points in time of assessment for learning. The thing I think is always the most interesting and vibrant part that we need to be thinking about is, what does assessment as learning look like? And what are the opportunities that are there for us as educators when we think about that? How do we engage students inside of that assessment process? How do we take an assessment like that paper-based oral history project and associate it in a meaningful way with a multimodal assignment, right? Because we're thinking about assessment in very different ways there. Are we using assessments to report out or to report in? Do we use that data to think about ourselves? Do we use it to really evaluate our own curriculum and to think about how we're engaging kids and how kids are moving? I see such an opportunity in designing and assigning and observing and collaborating in and interpreting assessment data and students' work alongside kids, where we assign meaning to that data together. And technology provides us a way to do that, and it provides us a different kind of agency because we are not passive consumers of assessment data, right? I hope as teachers that we're not. And I think we can kind of change that conversation that seems to be going on right now around data and assessment and thinking about what kind of agency we have. I'm going to pass on now to the gentleman as we think about where we're going to go next.
Okay. All right. We think we have a plan. So thank
Okay,
you, Sarah.
we got it next.